Damn. That song is always, forever going to be a banger. I don't care who you are, you're gonna jam to this. Every time you hear it, because it is just that great. This is PS1 music, liquid pop, whatever you want to call it, at its finest. So, Parasite Eve. I'm gonna try to modernize this game with this pitch of a video. If you would allow me to explain myself before we get into it, I'll tell you exactly why. I love Parasite Eve. I love 1 and 2. I have very harsh feelings on 3, but I love this game. I love this franchise, the legacy, and you can understand why it's a cult classic. But this game is old. It's a bit dated. Even if it's still a great time, I still enjoy playing this, but I feel that time hasn't been kind to this game. Right? Many people won't even look at this game or even give it a single try. They won't touch it because of the controls. They won't touch it because of the graphics, no voice acting, the massive amount of text, the wall of expedition you have to go through, and most importantly, this thing costs money. So, if you want to just use legal emulation systems, by all means do you. I ain't your dad. Which is why I propose to modernize Parasite Eve. Maybe the first 2 games, take a little from the 3rd game. Even though it has massive plot issues, the gameplay right there is pretty enjoyable as is. Give it some credit where it is. So, Parasite Eve is one of those cult classic hits. Let's be honest. The song at the beginning, you probably heard that already without knowing where it came from. Well, you've been taught. This track is one of the most famous tracks on the PS1. So, let's get real. Square Enix loves, and I mean loves, Final Fantasy. The whole series, it just loves it, right? Though some of them get more attention than the other, Final Fantasy VII, but it works. And Fantasy VII is a really good game, a really good franchise at this point. It's just own damn thing. With so many spin-offs and so many sequels and so many remakes, it's just a lot for one number Final Fantasy. But seeing all this attention that Fantasy VII is getting from Square Enix pretty much killed my hope of ever seeing Parasite Eve coming back. And don't even get me started on this NFT crap they try to pull on us. It is just disheartening, really. I told myself I won't bring it, but I have to say it once. This is not this is trash. I hate it. I'm just putting my feelings out there. I know we all feel the same. Cool, moving on. As we all know, AAA companies don't like to use their massive catalogs of games and franchise they have made over the years. They just don't. Here is some of the franchise that Square Enix have made and just don't pay attention to. It's quite a bit. I mean, literally, this is quite an extensive list of franchise under your belt. I believe there's a lot of missed opportunity when it comes to this aspect of every AAA publisher or gaming company in general. Let me explain. Let's use Square Enix as an example since we are talking about them, and let's use the recent Final Fantasy 16. Give me 3 seconds to gush. This looks amazing. This looks awesome. I want to play it. I can't wait to play it. I bought a PS5 just so I can play this game after I've seen some more trailer. Oh my god, dude. Oh my, it looks so good. Alright, back to the topic at hand, Parasite Eve. We know Final Fantasy 16 is going to be great. Fantastic even. Square Enix doesn't play when it comes to the Final Fantasy series. They just don't. They make sure they get it right 100%. But Final Fantasy 16, just saying, the whole combat system they're going for could have been Musashi. Just could have been a whole remade Musashi remake. Look, I may be crazy, but this goes into this. This can easily be explained into this. It's literally like 2 steps from here to here. Just saying. There's missed opportunities with these franchises that these AAA publishers are not willing to just take the risk for. So, I'm just gonna make a video about it. That's all I can do. And maybe this can inspire some indie devs to just do it themselves. It'll be cool, but you know, I ain't banking on that. I'm just saying, it'll be really cool. Alright, so if you know anything about Parasite Eve, I'm not really gonna spoil it here, but I am gonna tell you to just go look at Oni Black Mage. They tell you everything that's going on. It is an in-depth story summary into its simplest forms. He does it well, he does it perfect. Go subscribe to him. He tells you everything you need to know about all the old games you never really had the time to beat or get into. If you want to go watch a couple videos that's like, you know, not much, like 15, 30 minutes long, whatever, I'm going to give you my dumb bot's interpretation. Ayabrea, here, this lady, we love her. She even got the Laura Croft treatment back in the day, which was problematic, now thinking about it. But that ain't the point of this summary. She's out on a date, and everything's going okay, because she's with this douche. Apparently he has some money. And this lady decides to set everybody on fire organically. That makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense. Trust me, organically they die. But they don't die. But hey, whatever. Now, you somehow are immune to this nonsense, and you have to figure out what is going on and why. Turns out that you were experimented as a child, and now you are the only person designed to actually deal with this threat. Which explains why you're by yourself all the time. Now, in your team, you have Cool Dad. He's your partner. We have Asian Doctor that's just here for the plot. Just for the plot. We also have the best R&D gun development, gun customization man in the world, Wade. No relations to Batman. But I mean, you would believe it if they're connected somehow, because the things this man's able to do and teach you with his tool is amazing. Anyways, you have obvious bad guy, Flying Lady in Red, who's trying to birth the Antichrist, or the end of the world. And you're just like, no. So Aya, as an agent of Planned Parenthood, now has to follow this lady, find her, and say no to the baby. That's the game. It's quite simple. It makes no sense, but it's quite simple. It actually does make a lot of sense. Again, go watch Oni Black Mage coverage on this. It's perfect, succinct, less than 15 minutes, and you'll be happy to know everything about this game. I'm not going to get into a story of Parasite Eve 2 and 3, but I am going to say how the game changed gameplay-wise. Gameplay-wise, Parasite Eve 2 is a straight-up massive upgrade. This is quite shocking at the time for a sequel to come out in the PS1 and basically overhaul the complete game and the systems around it. There's very little DNA from Parasite Eve 1 that's still left intact in Parasite Eve 2. Let me explain. Visually speaking, massive upgrade, tiers went up. Details of the background are fantastic. Just take this image here of Wayne. I love him. Look at the background. A little blurry, but you can tell exactly what's going on. Now take up an image of, I don't know, this garage in Parasite Eve 2. There's a lot more details, a lot more to work with. It's a little more sharper. This is good all across the board. Cool. When it comes to combat, the game changed quite a bit. From active time, where you just had to wait for this bar to fill up, for then you can actually take some turns and do some damage, which it has its own merit. While this is charging up, you have to be dodging. Fair enough. That's the action that this game has. Dodge, and then you shoot. And then you dodge, and then you shoot. 2, active, just real-time shooting with your gun. Some guns have secondary fires, and you also did cast your spells. They call it parasite abilities. You use PE. No, I'm just calling it spells because Square Enix made it. Alright, so it's just called spells. Anyways, you cast your spells, and when you cast your spell in the second game, time freezes, giving you a chance to best align what you want to do and how you want to best spend it, which is pretty good. Also, you can customize your gun even more wildly than before. It's quite good. Finally, a quick overview on the third game. Aya can switch around people's bodies, and she does this to best position yourself to do damage and just shoot everything, because every monster or every boss is just a bullet sponge. I really don't want to get into it, so I'm not going to get into it, but it is fun, it is enjoyable. There's a reason why this was made for the handheld for the PSP, and it was good, it was fun, it was great. I'm not going to talk about this game more than I have to. Now it's time for the meat of the video. How would a modern take on Parasite Eve look? Let's talk about this. First and foremost, we have to address the elephant in the room. Fits, camera angles, and tank controls just have to go. I'm sorry. I like them for what they are. I play with them. I got used to them. My first game where I had to legitimately play with tank controls was Code Veronica X. It was alright. I got used to it. It was not that bad. It was actually pretty good. That being said, modern gaming has made it clear they don't like it, so we're not gonna do it. We want this game to be a success, so let's do what works. Analog controls for everyone. Some would assume that Parasite Eve best fit a first-person control. I don't think so. This ain't gonna be Deus Ex Machina with bio magic. No, that's not how it's gonna work. At least that's not how I see it. How I do see it, it's more of a third-person control scheme. She's over the shoulder, and you're following Aya around. Listen, if it worked for Resident Evil, it will work here as well. So, we're just doing that. Resident Evil 4 is a sample, not the end-all be-all, just the sample. I just want to make that very clear before I introduce the two games that we're going to be taking a lot of inspiration from. Now, I want to make it very clear. Parasite Eve is an action RPG with heavy horror elements in its narrative. I want to say that again. An action RPG with very heavy body horror and horror elements in its story. No matter what you tell me, it is impossible to be afraid of playing this game if you are a red mage. If I can haste myself, I can cast heal, I can shoot fireballs, I'm not scared. I might be disturbed, but I ain't scared. See, like, the perfect example is, this scares me. Dead Space scares me. Parasite Eve does not. Resident Evil 2 scares me. It's scary. It's spooky. Parasite Eve does not. Silent Hill scares me. Terrifies. Okay, you got the picture. You understand exactly what I'm trying to say. Now let me introduce the two games we'll be taking a lot of inspiration from. When I say remake, I mean 100% like Final Fantasy VII remake. A full, comprehensive uprest from the top bottom to the end game remake. Okay? Cool. We're going to be looking into Remnant from the Ashes. Love this game. I'm surprised that the second one is coming out. We're not going to talk about that, but it's good news. So, Remnant from the Ashes is game 1. Game 2 that we're going to be taking a lot of inspiration from is going to be Control. It's a good game. It's a good third-person action game, and its ability system really aligns well with the ideas and the things that you could possibly do in Parasite Eve. Let me get into it. First and foremost, before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, music can stay the same. As long as it emulates, improves, or even just remasters the tracks from the original game, I'm okay. This song needs to stay the same, or they need to use the remastered version from the third birthday, because it's great. I love this song. Secondly, this is quite simple. Quality of life. First and foremost, when it comes to the inventory, this whole system right here, needs to go. It really needs to go. You will spend upward of 15 minutes going over your inventory, upgrading, moving, and putting stuff in storage. This is annoying. This takes too long. It just needs to go. Resident Evil 2, 1, and 3 all have the same issues, and I disliked it when I was playing the originals as well. We're talking about status menu. We're talking about upgrade menu. We're talking about the inventory. We're talking about equipment. We're talking about customization. We're talking about even your own status and data archive. I don't know. Just, I want a proper menu. This right here is a mess. It's an unadulterated scrolling marathon of just pushing up, down, XO, up, down, X. It needs to go. It simply needs to go. I can't believe asking for a basic menu layout with tabs is something I have to say, but here we are. The following few sections are just going to be me describing a certain aspect of a game and how it ties back into, well, Parasite Eve and either Remnant from the Ashes or Control. That doesn't mean I won't be using other examples from different games, and do expect to have spoilers from the games I'm about to just talk about. So these are the list of games I'll be using. If you don't want any spoilers, I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, before we continue, the Parasite Eve remake is going to be more like an open world third-person shooter or a large area based third-person shooter. That way we all know exactly what we're talking about and where it fits in the grand scheme of things. Now, if you haven't played Remnant from the Ashes, which I do recommend, or Control, which I highly recommend, and you still don't know what type of game we're talking about, my best and only example I have for you is think about Metal Gear 5, The Phantom Pain. A large open world sandbox that allows you to do, well, a lot of weird nonsense in it. It's not like a weird bad thing. It's more like this game allows you to do a lot of weird stuff. This is cool, but if you would describe it to someone, they'll think it's weird. Let's talk movement. One of the most important aspects of any game is how you move through it. Even if it's just point and click, you still have to path that out. It's a big deal. So much so that devs will spend months, upward to like 8 months, just to get the movement correct for a character and then start building levels for it. So in a modern take of Parasite Eve, I believe it should start somehow like this. Like Remnant from the Ashes. You move, you have your dodge roll, you shoot, you can cover, and then it should become somewhere around, well, given how you evolve and the game is about evolving, the parasite, massive rapid mutation, it should end somewhere like this. Let's take Jessie from Control. She's walking everywhere, then as she gains strength, she starts flying. She starts dashing. She starts doing all this other cool stuff. I believe given the abilities and the potential of biomagic, because that's what Parasite Energy is, just biomagic, she can do this. She can literally start flying or dashing through walls or just going intangibility. She can do a lot. Though Aya can become, well, essentially God, and she does for a few seconds. I don't get sick of seeing this. Another example, before moving on to the next point, let's take Sora from Kingdom Hearts 2. He starts much like Jessie, walking around, jumping on occasion, grabbing a ledge, and just, well, if you unlock the dodge roll, he dodges. But for the most part, he's just parrying everything until he gets the dodge roll. But as the game goes on, as you unlock the forms and you level them up, you just become a movement god. So much so that the areas have to be made with that movement in mind. In fact, if you want to even go deeper into it, strategies are made with said movement. Let's take Malusha for a second. You need to fly. I mean, you can parry all this, you can reflect it, but this is an option that's given to you thanks to the movement that Sora has. I'm not saying Aya should move like Sora, but I'm saying her movement should evolve given the theme of the game. Next we got armor and health. Just like Death Space, I believe that Aya should get suits of armors in this game. Let me explain for a quick second. I'm sure that the US finest scientists will be hard at work trying to figure out an armor that can help their regular units, not Aya, the anti-parasite, try to figure out how they can help take back New York. Having one single person go in to deal with that mess is not ideal. It's just not the way it's gonna go. Anybody with logic will be like, we need to combat this as best as possible for everybody. Greater numbers, greater strength. So using health or armor as an example, On occasion, you just get an upgrade to your armor. Aya puts on a new suit, and she's testing it out for the scientists, and with that data, they make her a better suit. The same thing can go for health, where like she takes a vaccine, they see how it deals with it, and then they make it better. Or she just finds new samples to give them. Something like that. Wait, before you even start, I know you're gonna say, well, she gets experience, she levels up, she gets more armor and more health. I got you. Fine. Let's just use the context of the world. She gains experience, research data or whatever. She goes back to home space. She spends that experience on the R&D department, the sciences, and they give her better armor and better health. That way she still accumulates levels by just experience. She spends it how she wants it, or how you want it, and you still get the RPG elements that you want. I think that's a good compromise. Let me know in the comments if it's not a good compromise, or if you have any ideas to do it differently. So, gun modifications. I don't want to take this away from the game because I believe this is really important to the identity of, well, Parasite Eve. Listen, again, like I said before, you will spend upwards of 10 minutes modifying your guns because it's that important and it makes that much of a difference in the game. Now, that being said, I can see this going two ways in this remake. First way would be Aya is a gun nut. Like, besides Aya being, pretty cool and a badass, she really doesn't have a personality at all. In the first game, she doesn't say anything. In the second game, she doesn't really say much, but she has more of a personality there, I guess. She's more kind of sick of it, but whatever. And if she's a gun nut, that just adds one to her personality. Two, it will explain how she knows how to do all this stuff. Like, she's taking a machine gun and putting a rocket launcher attached to it. I don't know how that works, but it's amazing. So that's Method 1. Explain it within the context of the character that she loves weapons. Also, can we say she gets it all from Wayne? Because I love Wayne, alright? I love Wayne. He's a master, she's the student, you know what I'm saying? Like Karate Kid. More like Gun Kata Kid. No, I'm sorry. Method 2, which I think will be a little more fun and it would be a lot cooler for the game. Let me explain. After defeating her first mini boss, she puts her gun inside this creature, blows it up, and it's covered in some bio goo. This is how she can modify her weapons through biology. Yes, it's bio magic, just it's weird. Anyways, after she learns how to customize her gun or gets enough every time she defeats a mini boss or just does enough missions or whatever, she gets to customize everything about her gun. Clip size, gun size, armor piercing, bullet element, bullet patterns, such like that. This is taking a lot from Returnal just because I think that makes sense in the context of what's going on right now with Aya and the Parasite. The Parasite is also attached to the gun and she can alter it however way she wants it, giving her a plethora of things to do. Also, I just want more games to have awesome bullet patterns like this. This is cool. I love this. I'm currently playing this game and it's amazing. We need more of this in gaming. As you can see, both explanation, her being a gun nut that can just do this because she learned from the best Wayne, and using, the bio, parasite, magic, Eve, whatever, to explain this suits this game perfectly. And it suits Aya as well perfectly. Let me know in the comments, which one do you side with more? I'm not sure myself. Both of them are very good in my opinion. So I'm going to put enemies and combat together. You can't talk one without the other because you only have combat because of the enemies. And you have enemies because of the combat. Alright, let's talk about it. I vividly remember when I was young watching my stepfather, he's a G, play this game in front of my mom and us, the child. This scene right here with the rat just deciding to shed his skin and be free and beautiful scared the living crap out of my mom. So, I know this game, Parasite Eve, for two reasons. One, banging ass music. Two, the body horror. And I'm gonna say we should do more of that. Now, throughout the series, enemy designs have been great. Honestly, they've all been pretty cool. The third one had some weird shapes, but it makes sense given that if you use a microscope and you look at bacteria, they're all shapes. So that makes sense, but it's very weird. It's a bit weird. So when it comes to the enemy, I believe that it needs to vary wildly. Remember, things are mutating at a very rapid rate. We don't know how this outbreak will hold them or will affect them, and I think it can be very justifiable given its many mutations. Just look at some of the signs that they have in the first 2 games alone. And how will we describe these mutations? Well, Resident Evil has a perfect explanation. Take the T-virus. The T-virus can do all of this. Depending on how compatible a person is with the T-virus, they can become, the tyrant, or a straight zombie. And that makes perfect sense given how mutation in biology works. Now, I'm going to get more into it later, but given how Aya is the anti-parasite, I believe that certain people in the populations should be affected differently based on, what's going on. I mean, we all know Eve is a proud supporter of Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award because she is funding them with all this goo. Right? We know this, right? We know this? Okay, cool. We're on the same page. Now, when it comes to combat, it's quite simple and straightforward. Aya's a cop, and she has a gun. We can use cover, we can use shotgun, explosives, red barrels. The stuff that works should not change. She's a cop. Before she becomes a bio-red mage, she's a cop. So she's gonna just use that gun, use the cover, and then use her surroundings how she needs to. Then she's gonna add, bio magic to it, because it's pretty cool. I love it, okay? So this part is simple. The enemies need to be explained though, but this part is simple. So when it comes to combat, it all depends on how complicated the devs want it to be for the player. Let's use Parasite Eve for a quick example, right? We're talking about it, so let's continue with it. In Parasite Eve 1 and 2 for the most part, combat is simple. You go into a room, combat is initiated, you shoot them, and they die. You rarely have a chance to miss. You can cast a couple spells, you can buff yourself, heal yourself, but most part, you're gonna be shooting and dodging. And that's about it. That's combat. It's not that complicated. Sure, in Parasite Eve 1, you have to wait and shoot. But in Parasite Eve, if you have the ammo to just mow down enemies, you're gonna just mow down enemies. Throw in the odd spell or so, and that's combat in a nutshell. Now let's take a game where combat is a lot more complicated and expanded on. Borderlands. It is a perfect case example for this. In Borderlands, you will have multiple elements, multiple enemy types, and multiple weak points that you could be striking for most effectiveness. You will have fire, you will have thunder, you will have corrosive, and you will have slag. Those are your basic elements, but there is also weak points per different enemy types. Sure, for the most part, headshots are the way to go, but sometimes you have to shoot someone's arm off, someone's legs off. You have to shoot the glowing bits on them. Combat in Borderlands is highly varied. Sure, you're just shooting a whole bunch of dudes with walls of ammos. I get that. But what tips it off even more is that Borderlands has a massive, extensive list of different enemy variations and typing. Long story short, the longer the name of the enemy, the more problem he is. I believe having a massive list or roster of enemies that have all massively different mutations and potential to become an actual problem on the field would be good for a game like Parasite Eve. At least the remake we're talking about. So boss fights can be any monster, animal / people that has a high affinity with the mitochondria. Listen, you're gonna hear that word a lot when you play the game. I can't say this, let alone spell it. Google, hook me up. I got it wrong. Oh man, I got that wrong already. As we know, Parasite Eve has random monstrosities throughout its series, and more so the boss fights. This baby has to go. But I feel like boss fights in Parasite Eve don't do much but give you experience and the random gun. Because I don't know why this rat was carrying an AK-47, but yes please. Wait, I know why. It's the Bronx. Of course they were going to have AK-47s. Now, I'm going to tie this section back to the movement, and this is where we can get the movement we were talking about earlier. After you defeat a certain boss, you get an ability from it, whether it be parry, dodge, dash, an active or passive, upgrade your weapons or your melee weapons. As long as The bosses are one meaningful for the area that you're gonna fight them in, have an interesting backstory, or delicious flavored text. Everything I'm saying here sounds a bit nebulous and without direction, so let's focus on control for a quick second. To get Levitate, one of the most impactful movement tools in the game, I mean this thing was everywhere in the promotional tools, you're gonna have to play the game and actually get to a certain point to unlock it. It does take a little getting used to, but given that it's Levitate, it's a powerful ability to give any character, this makes sense. Let's say Aya gets this as well. This ability should be unlocked after she kills a boss, or she does something impactful with the story. Revenant from the Ashes does this very well. It is a bit of a Souls-like, so every time you kill a boss, you're gonna get something, whether it be a weapon or an ability, which are known as mods. I believe we should get a lot more mods to Aya so that our arsenal can build dramatically. For example, using Remnant from the Ashes, you start with wall hacks. It's pretty cool. Not bad. Then you get Homing Radiation Blast. Pretty cool. Not bad. Then you get the ability to banish your foes to the Shadow Realm. Oh, it's so cool. And I believe Aya can have something not like this, similar to this, or at least some gameplay mechanics that are similar to this. Reward you for killing the boss. That's all I'm saying. Next, we're going to talk about progression. It comes on after every major boss fight. Now, in the first game, there's kind of a problem here. You mainly focus on Manhattan, which is not a bad thing. We had the museum, we had Central Park, we had some of the sewers, and we even had the police station. You were even on the boat. The baby has to go. But given today's technology, I want to see most, if not all of New York, except Buffalo. Buffalo is safe. I want to see Queens, I want to see Brooklyn, and I want to see the Bronx. Alright? I'm just saying, I want to see those other areas, and you can do a lot with this. As we know, we are thinking as this remake as a third-person open world shooter. So, let's see the other districts in New York. Let's see those other boroughs. You know what I mean? With that, we can have different types of areas. So since Brooklyn is closer to the sea on the map, here's the map by the way, we can have a little more aquatic theme, bioorganic areas. Why is that coral reef growing on that building? This makes no sense. With that in mind, you can make every area very distinct from each other. So Central Park can be a giant forest with man-eating plants, and you just have to bring a flamethrower along with you, tying it back to the gun modifications. So now that we have the next three boroughs, Queens, Bronx, and Brooklyn, I think that we should have distinct reasons to be in those areas, such as rescue, supply routes, getting back, the train system running, testing weapons, search and destroy, evacuations, stuff like that. With that in mind, we can tie it back to the enemies because every borough, or tri-state area if you want to call it, will have their own distinct enemy types. Sure, they'll have some common enemies fodder throughout the whole world, but some areas will have their signature enemies. Now I need to get into little details on areas. The areas can be designed like a Remnant from the Ashes, very outdoor, see like ruins, or if you want to. So just take this environment right here that you see and put a bunch of bio goo around. And that's pretty much what we're looking for when it comes to this game. Earlier we did talk about movement and what Aya can possibly do, levitate or teleport or dash or whatever. I believe this could also tie very well into areas. And again, if you're going to have movement that complex and that fluid, you're going to have an area that suits it. Big open desolated streets sounds like the play. I can just picture her jumping from rooftop to rooftop, trying to avoid some monstrosity after her. And of course, we have to add some puzzles in this game. Puzzles were in the first game, puzzles were definitely in the second game, and it's a part of the identity of Parasite Eve. Not the third one, but we forgive it. It's a handheld title. Moving on. Puzzles come down to three major types. I know there's more, but it's just three major types when it comes to this type of game that we're talking about, an open world third-person shooter. We got key item puzzles. Think anything Resident Evil does with its main objectives. You need mask 1, 2, and 3 to get the stone and progress with the story. There's not much to it, but these things can be as elaborate as you need them to be. Let me explain real quick. Using the Rose DLC from Resident Evil 8, to get all 3 masks in this starting area, I had to go through several combat puzzles, several environmental puzzles, and several logic puzzles, just to get all 3 to progress with the story. It didn't matter the order, it just mattered that all that got done. Next type of puzzle will be location and environmental puzzle. Again, using Resident Evil as an example because it's perfect. You can beat this game without getting the shotgun. You really can. You don't need it. It helps, but you can beat the game without getting the shotgun. This puzzle only affects you on this specific area, and once you are done with this area, you miss it. The best way to think about it is any Castlevania has a percent amount attached to it. You don't need everything to beat the game. Like, again, you don't need a shotgun to beat the game. Would it help? Of course, but you need to be in this area to solve it. It doesn't get solved any other time in the game. And lastly, it's going to come down to combat puzzles. Combat puzzles can be sprinkled within enemy encounters or boss encounters themselves. Again, using Resident Evil because it's a perfect example. Take this section with Jill. I don't know that I need to use the mines to stop this monster. That's something that the game does not tell me. I just figured it out on myself. That's a combat puzzle. Now, combat puzzles can be as, and I mean this, as complex as the devs want it to be. So by all means, use your imaginations of super annoying boss fights that only take damage under a certain phase for it to count. Like if you're 100%, oh my god, I hate this boss. You remember this? Do you guys remember this? I did this. This shit sucked. This, a nightmare, sucked. And essentially, that's a combat puzzle. It's a simple combat puzzle, but it's a combat puzzle nonetheless. Simple doesn't mean it wasn't hard. Let's just say that. Simple doesn't mean it wasn't hard. Now, we're going to talk about story. And if we're going to remake this game, much like Final Fantasy VII Remake, I find it hard to believe that the story will not need to be revisioned. Listen, slow it down. Even though it was great at the time, Parasite Eve's narrative, it's kind of basic. I'm not saying it was bad. Aya is a badass. We need more of her or her character type in today's gaming. I'm not talking about the third birthday. That's not a real game. But in all fairness, the events of the first game, Parasite Eve 1, goes by too fast. The game does have some pacing issues. Sure, some areas that take a long time because enemy spikes just happen, and after a while, your weapons become too godly, so enemies don't matter, and then you get the wall of text, a massive wall of text from time to time, because you need a lot of expeditions here. This is like times 3 speed of this one section. There's a lot of talking here. There's just a lot. Now, this ain't a bad thing. This is good writing. The story should take maybe 2 weeks or maybe an undisclosed amount of time. Give enough reason or a time frame for the players to actually explore the world that you're building. Remember, we have 4 boroughs: Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and Bronx. I don't want to just explore Manhattan in a couple city blocks. I want to see more of this world. I want to see how complex and how weird an interpretation on today's gaming hardware Parasite Eve will look like. This is why story is the last section I wanted to tackle, because you can explain everything through the story. Enemies, progression, bosses, movement, areas, the world, everything. You can explain it very well through the story. And this is why I want to say slow it down, experiment a little, give us more of the random stuff that we expect to see in a game like this, with a setting like this. Not everything needs to be told to us by, pen and paper or straight to our face through text or dialogue. We can just walk around and see the problems of the world. Take the museum in Parasite Eve 1. You can't tell anything is wrong here without actually knowing prior that this place is infested with monstrosity. If you didn't know the setting of the game and just showed this to someone, even they wouldn't know what this location is. And we already seen and know what happens when you slow the story down. Just look at Final Fantasy VII Remake. This whole session, this whole Midgar session, can be done in a couple hours in the base game. But no, there's a whole 40-hour campaign in there for you in the remake. And that's a pinnacle of gaming and writing, world building, and just I don't know, character development. There's so much interactions here. This is really good. It's amazing what they've done, which is a short section of the main game. And personally, I believe Parasite Eve deserves that same treatment. Just saying. I would like to remind everybody that everything we talked about can work for both Control, its movement, its world, its vegetation, and Revenant from the Ashes, its movement, its world, its vegetation. And it can work as a hybrid. Close your eyes and just think of everything we just talked about. And what do you picture in your mind? I'm pretty sure you can see something working in there for you. But the music must stay the same. We're not changing it. It's perfect. We love it. Remember that. We love it. I hope I made a strong case for Parasite Eve to get a remake. If any indie devs out there wants to just take ideas from this, feel free. Hit me up. I'll get into more details for you. I really don't care. I want to inspire people. This game has inspired this whole video essay, I guess. Just pitch idea. So I'm just going to share that with the world. Alright, I would literally get crucified if I don't say this. But Parasite Eve can also work as a, survival horror like Dead Space. It would be really easy. Just take away the levels, add a limited amount of ammos and upgrades and heals, make sure that your usage of power is very limited, place enemies in the right location, make the music more spooky, stuff like that. It's not that hard to see how a survival horror should play and how Parasite Eve itself could just retrofit into that category of games. Oh, and for the love of God, Parasite Eve 3 can easily be an XCOM game. Just saying, if you know, you know. This has been definitely not a box. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to hit that like, comment, and subscribe. I need more packet peanuts. I'm trying to hit 100 subs. Still haven't, but hey, we are close, and I think we can make it. So I'll catch you on the next one, and have a great day. Oh, you're still here. You can go. The video's over. But if you allow me, just one more time. I'm just gonna let it play one more time.